This is second part of the series. If you haven't watched the first part, link in the description, go and watch. In the first part, we see how Dolan made a plan to take Selena with him to his village and live with her. He offered to share his life energy with her whenever she wanted. As he stretched out his hand, Cell nervously took it, and Dolan sent some of his life energy into her. She felt an incredible rush and smiled, feeling satisfied. A few days later, the Knight Captain and his troops found a huge boar and some fish left at their doorstep. This had been happening for days, and everyone was curious. The redhead Marl pointed out the trail of a giant snake, and another girl guessed it must be the half-snake monster they had spotted in the forest. The captain, knowing that lamias were powerful and dangerous, was puzzled as to why one would leave its prey. He decided to inform the village elders. Everyone wondered if the monster leaving them delicious meat was actually their enemy, but the Knight Captain warned them not to be fooled. He said a monster would ultimately try to hurt them and suggested forming a unit to kill her. Others cautioned against taking risks, suggesting they request backup from the capital. However, the old hag disagreed, advising the Knight Captain to think carefully before making rash decisions. Just then, Aerie entered the room with a strange pot, telling the old hag she had done the fortune-telling as asked. The old woman checked the results and said the reading showed that the appearance of a snake was good fortune, meaning they should not harm the lamia. Outside, Dolan was chopping wood and overheard everything. He felt delighted when he heard that the old witch had convinced everyone to give Cell a chance. That evening, he rushed into the forest to share the good news with her. He told her there was no immediate threat, and they were ready to move to the next phase of their plan. Cell thanked him for his help, saying he was the one who encouraged her to leave meat offerings outside the village and even assisted her in hunting. Dolan waved it off and explained the final part of his plan to her. The next morning, all the capable fighters and knights of the village gathered for joint training. Captain Baran briefed them on the lamia and reminded them to stay on guard. Albert told Dolan that all the village leaders were there, and Dolan realized that Baran still considered Cell a threat. Dolan knew that all the important people gathered were exactly what he needed for the final part of his plan. Among them, the most crucial was the priestess. She was highly respected in the village for her healing and purification magic. She represented the church and had the power to declare whether Cell was good or evil. Dolan hoped everything would go well and that the priestess wouldn't see Cell as evil. He glanced toward the forest, where Cell was trembling with fear and anticipation. Last night, Dolan had shared his plan with her, which involved him jumping into a den of low-level monsters, and Cell saving him. He had told her that once she saved him, no one would call her evil, and she would be allowed to live in the village. But now she seemed unsure and wondered when she should act. Dolan was waiting for that moment too, when a soldier suddenly ran out of the forest, shouting that he had found the monster. Everyone assumed it was the lamia, and even Cell wondered if there was another snake girl nearby. However, Dolan's sharp senses told him that the monster the frantic soldier was talking about was something much more dangerous. Then a giant armored bear appeared, causing all the knights to panic. Captain Baran ordered everyone to slowly retreat, knowing they couldn't possibly fight the bear without risking their lives. The children started to run, and the red-headed cowboy fell to the ground. The bear noticed him and began to approach, making everyone even more anxious. Thinking quickly, Dolan rushed to save the boy, realizing that he would need to use his dragon powers to stop the armored bear. But just as he was about to reach the boy, Cell leaped out from the bushes. She shielded Dolan and the boy with her body, suffering a terrible injury from the bear's claw in the process. Everyone was shocked by her bravery. Cell turned toward the bear and used her innate hypnotic powers to send it back into the forest. The bear obeyed, and everyone was astonished by Cell's abilities. Dolan quickly asked if she was okay, but she snapped at him, asking if he was blind and couldn't see the blood pouring from her wounds. Just then, the Knight Captain slammed his weapon on the ground, ordering Cell to get away from the villagers. Dolan urged the boy to run, but he stayed put. Baron insisted he leave too, but Dolan defended Cell, saying she had saved the boy's life. Baron replied that despite that, she was still a dangerous monster and couldn't be allowed to stay for the village's safety. Dolan stood up to him, stating that he wasn't taught to repay kindness with cruelty, and that he would stand by Cell. Baran decided to question Cell first, asking if she had been leaving offerings outside the village. She confirmed it and bowed before him, pleading to stay. Cell explained how she had set out on a journey according to her species' customs, but it had been lonely and frightening. She swore she held no hatred toward humans, as her father was human, and promised she wouldn't harm anyone. No one was afraid of her anymore, and Baran turned to the priestess for her opinion. The priestess stood still, tears streaming down her face as a divine light shone upon her, delivering a message from goddess Myro. Once the message ended, she declared that Sel was not evil, and that the goddess instructed the villagers to live in harmony with her. The priestess approached Sel and welcomed her into the village. Sel lifted her head to thank her, but then suddenly fainted from blood loss. Dolan caught her and hurried her to the village for treatment. The next day, Sel had recovered enough for Dolan and the others to show her to her new house. When she entered, she couldn't believe her eyes. The house was filled with cushions, and a stuffed toy sat on her bed. She was touched by the villagers' kindness and thanked them. Baran replied that he should be the one thanking her for saving his son's life, and then apologized for pointing his weapon at her. Everyone in the village warmly welcomed Sel, and Dolan introduced himself to her as if they were meeting for the first time. A few days passed, and Sel quickly blended in with the villagers, laughing and chatting as if she had lived there forever. Dolan felt a surge of happiness, knowing his efforts had paid off. That night, he decided to thank the goddess Myrael himself. While he slept, Dolan left his body in an astral form and soared into the night sky. He entered a place that looked like heaven in his dragon form, where the beautiful goddess Myrael awaited him. They exchanged small talk, and Dolan thanked her for saving Sel from being harmed by the villagers. Myrael replied that Sel seemed very kind, so she felt she had to help. Dolan found it hard to believe that a real goddess recognized him as a dragon, born in human form. Myrael laughed, saying his life force was much stronger than others. She mentioned that whenever he prayed, he seemed tired of living in his dragon form, which surprised her to see him happy and fulfilled as a human. Dolan explained that when the hero's blade had pierced his heart, he felt no anger or sadness. In fact, he was relieved that his life was over. But as a human, he had created wonderful memories in the village. He admired how humans lived each day to the fullest, because their lives were so short. This new perspective made him enjoy every moment on Earth. Myrael smiled and remarked that he seemed unusually happy lately, possibly because of Sel, who had also been brighter since joining the village. Soon after, Dolan returned to his physical body. The next morning, he was awakened by a cheerful Sel bursting through his door, urging him to get out of bed. Dolan reminded her to knock first, as he sometimes liked to have a moment alone before starting his day. Sel apologized, but insisted he needed to wake up, because today would be amazing. We had planned to plant potatoes with Christina today. Dolan laughs and says, "Ah, yes, I remember." Meanwhile, Christina is overhearing their conversation and smiling slightly. Then, a new scene is shown where a girl in the town is about to deliver a letter to another girl. There are several fairies around her, and she places the letter in her hands. The girl is very excited and says, "This letter is from Christina. Open it quickly." The headmistress, named Olivia, says, "You seem very excited." To which the girl replies, "Yes, because Christina is the pride of our academy." Olivia uses her magical power to open the letter and begins reading it. The letter from Christina says, "I've been living in Varan village for quite some time now, as there is a great need for security in Varan North. Because of this, all villagers must undergo combat training." Now we can see that it turned out that Chris was having a sparring match against Vice Captain Marl. The whole village gathered to watch them, debating who was stronger. Dolan noticed that Marl wasn't going all out, and Chris sensed it too, as Marl attacked Chris with her dagger. Chris blocked the attack. She knocked the sword out of Marl's hand and won the match. Chris helped Marl back to her feet, complimenting her as one of the best fighters she had ever sparred with. Marl blushed at the praise and started to question her feelings. To lighten the mood, Baran slapped Marl on the back and congratulated Chris on her victory. Marl then invited Chris to a party, and the villagers cheered with excitement. Chris wondered why everyone was so happy. Later that night, Chris and Marl went to the tavern together to grab some food. The serving girls seemed very interested in Chris because she looked like a K-pop star. Soon, Baran and the others arrived. The captain immediately asked Chris to drink with him, but Albert warned her not to accept because Baran was known to drink heavily, just like his father. Marl jumped in, telling Baran to back off since she had already called dibs on Chris. Baran playfully backed away and started joking around with his friends while they cheered him on. That night, Chris returned to her bed, still in her combat clothes. Looking out the window, she noticed Baran taking two guys into the barn for some fun. Annoyed by the noise, she decided to go train on the mountain. While swinging her sword, she caught Dolan and Sel's attention. Sel, who seemed a bit clueless, asked if Chris was practicing with her sword. Chris joked that she was just practicing to be a weed whacker. This made Sel excited, and she invited Chris back to her house, claiming it was cozy. Inside, Sel jumped on a bed filled with hay and pillows, insisting it was the best place to sleep. She invited Chris to join her. Dolan wondered why the girls were acting so eager and told Sel to calm down. Surprisingly, Chris joined Sel on the bed. Dolan stood by the wall, trying to look cool, while Sel mentioned how much she loved the village and hoped Chris felt the same. She talked about Baran's wife's milk, saying everyone enjoyed it. Chris found this a bit odd but let it slide. Dolan started talking about how life in the village was tough, but the girls were not interested. They pulled him onto the bed for a fun night. The next morning, Dolan went to the tavern, where everyone was drinking the milk Baran's wife had freshly made. He joked about how he could drink more than anyone else. Just then, Chris entered the tavern and was greeted warmly. Baran called her over to try some of the milk. Chris decided to join in this strange custom and chugged a whole mug in one go. She was surprised at how fresh it tasted. Baran got excited and challenged her to a drinking contest. They quickly started chugging glass after glass, while his wife worried about how much they were drinking. In the end, Baran couldn't keep up and lost to Chris, who handled the milk easily. Later, while Chris was chatting with Dolan and Sel, a cowwoman approached her, asking if she could try something special. She offered Chris a jug of milk, saying it was the first time her daughter had produced it. Feeling it was getting a bit weird, Chris still drank it, declaring it sweet and fresh, even asking for more. This got her a big hug from the daughter, leaving Chris in an awkward but funny situation. A little while later, Dolan took Chris and Sel back to his farm to do some hard work. Sel was happy to help, planting potatoes, though she did it a bit unevenly. Chris, on the other hand, started punching the soil for no reason. Just as Dolan was about to teach her something, one of the guards rushed up to them. "Come to the village gate right away," the guard shouted. They all ran to the gate and found Baran and some other villagers already there. A commissioner surrounded Dolan and Sel with guards and demanded to know if Dolan had brought a monster into their land. The village priest quickly stepped in, saying the oracle had checked Sel and confirmed she was not evil. The commissioner didn't question the goddess's wishes, but insisted that if Sel wanted to live as a citizen, she needed to go through government procedures. Dolan found this suspicious and asked if he could accompany them to the capital. The commissioner agreed. As they were escorted by the royal guards to the capital, Chris began to worry. She decided to meet with the headmistress of her school, who had a lot of influence in the government. Using her magic to move faster, she set off for the capital. When she arrived, she got a meeting with the elf headmistress, Olivia. Olivia told Chris to sit down and assured her that Sel wouldn't be harmed since she had the goddess's blessing. However, she mentioned a high-ranking mage named KC, who saw Sel as a threat due to some recent disappearances. Chris defended Sel, saying she would never do anything bad. Olivia agreed but suspected that KC wanted to have Sel killed for some other reason. This surprised Chris. She worried about what Sel and Dolan had gotten themselves into and prayed for their safety. And here the video ends. If you liked the story, please comment down below and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.